Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of HLTV Confirmed. I'm Chad, also known as SPUNJ. My last name's Birchall. If you really give a fuck, you can Google me if you want. There's some stuff on me on the internet. Most of it's incorrect. We got some guests here this evening, but before we get this one rolling, I believe this is episode 18. I could be wrong. We're doing a special right now. This is the Gamechanger special. I want to preface this before I introduce my guests and we get talking about the episode. If you are listening, if you are watching, if you're tuning in live, all those bits and pieces, this is an open forum discussion, ladies and gentlemen, that we want to start. This isn't anything crazy. We're not trying to twist anyone's arms. We're not trying to change Counter-Strike. We're just trying to have a bit of a discussion about where we're at, what we hold dear in Counter-Strike, and where we want our beautiful game to head. So with that out the way, with that prefaced here, let's introduce everybody. We've got Striker, Prof, and Rejin joining us. Now, Prof has had to sub on in because Pimp could not make it. We obviously announced him earlier in the week. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, so hope he feels better soon. But we've got Prof. Prof, I heard that you're running off about 3 hours sleep. Is that true?
Yeah, it was I'm usually a guy that sleeps well all the time. So when I don't sleep, it usually sucks like a lot. I'm really not used to it, but I'm chugging along. I'm ready for this. I'm going to give 130% and maybe replace like 70% of Pimp because he's amazing and I miss him, and that's it.
Well, I'm glad that you're gonna make up for that there, Striker. What percent are we expecting from you here this evening, mate?
100% as usual.
Okay, well that's all right. I can deal with that.
Consistent.
Consistently 100. And Rejin, thank you very much for joining us here this evening. Obviously, for those people who have been paying attention, there's you're one of the names who was actually getting involved in a discussion on Twitter the other day about different bits and pieces with Counter-Strike. How you doing, mate? Everything good in the hood?
Everything is just awesome here, man. Waking up early, except besides someone else here in the studio. Not gonna say names. Striker. But yeah, everything is good. Like, I'm getting a little sick of being home all the time, missing Denmark, but other than that, then I think it's all right. Working our asses off.
Well, we're kind of locked in the prisons of our homes playing Counter-Strike at the moment, right? So it definitely could be worse. It definitely could be better. But let's get this going because I feel that we have a lot of different topics to talk about here this evening. We have a lot of different stuff that we will probably bring up. And what I want to make clear for the people listening, for everybody here, nothing is too stupid, right? Like let's be honest, because
I'd argue with that statement.
Now, if you're saying that we should play on psychedelic drugs or something, Striker, I'd probably say yeah, that is too stupid. But in the confines of where I think we'll be going with this, we can talk about basically anything. And what we've got is we've got a couple of headers here that we'll be kicking off with. But the conversation, I assume we're going to go on tangents. We're going to end up everywhere. So let's just keep it loose and see how we go. Now, let's maybe preface a few bits and pieces here. Now, Prof, you did some homework for us because it's come to light, or at least the discussion was recently, that the game times felt like they were longer from the eye test. You've taken some data for us, and you can probably give us some definitive answers on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, I outsourced it to other people, which is an amazing thing, an amazing skill you need to learn when you get to like almost 30. So I outsourced that to Ashlyn and Ilya, our good social media guys, and they went and found the data. So what we found is definitely the length of an average match. We went on into the CSGO client and went to the major matches because there is just literally a time for each map, how long it lasted. So we found that data, put it in an Excel sheet, did all the math magic and stuff like that. So we found out that definitely the first 6 or 7 majors, the average length was much shorter. It was about 45 minutes. And then after the time, round time change and bomb timer change, it extended to about like 55 to up to an hour for an average map on every major. So that's a significant extension. And then going into the latest stuff that we saw, like the economy change and stuff like that, it seemed to be like maybe there is a small addition, like maybe we play like maybe 1 round more per map or something like that, but we don't really have a big sample size on that, so we can't really say definitively that extended the maps like significantly, let's say. But we also didn't do like road to Rio data and stuff like that, but because that's a completely different ball game, online stuff and all of that.
That's where it gets a little bit messy, right? Obviously, comparing online to LAN. If we had a major a little bit earlier on here, we would be able to check that. But just let's just recap. So we had the changes, obviously, for people who aren't aware. We went from 35-second bomb timer to 40-second bomb timer. We went from 145 round time to 155. Freeze time for a lot of these events has gone from 15 seconds up to 20 seconds. Now, I don't remember exactly when that came on in. We were having a discussion about that today. I remember E-League was definitely one of the ones in which I do recall. I may be wrong. And then what are the other changes that we've had as well? Obviously, this whole tactical timeout stuff that's changed from just the 2-minute tactical timeout to 4 30-second timeouts has added extra time there. Now, we'll probably pivot to you, Rejin, as an individual who has to stand behind a team for extended periods of time. Do you think that the matches, like just in general, are too long from just a general feeling?
I mean, Astralis game in Odense, where we were playing with all these technical difficulties and everything, where the match was like plus 5 hours, I think it was. I'm not 100%, but it felt like that. Of course, you're getting tired of that, but yeah. I mean, like it's the online matches is a bit different because you're home. You can sit. It doesn't really matter that much if it takes 1 hour more or whatever. Like the best of 5 we had against Fnatic was also pretty long. But when you're in a stadium environment and general LAN environment where you have to sit at your PC, you have to wait, you have to do this and this, suddenly 5 or like 3 hours is a very long time, you know.
Yeah,
and
I
lucky
think
for me, I'm not playing, you know, because my mind would totally skip there.
I think that like the really key point here with like match length is also probably would tie into later where we talk about tournament structures, right? Because if a tournament is going for a week and you're playing a best of 3 every single day, that's a very intense amount of time to have that level of focus, right? And then you have the prep and you have everything on top of that. So like that kind of a question on is our matches too long? I guess that really has to come down to what is it that where do we see Counter-Strike, or where do we want Counter-Strike to be? Because right now, from my perspective, it just feels like, and this isn't any one TO, this is everybody. It's just about getting as many games out there as humanly possible for like minutes watch. That's what it feels like, right? Now, the road to Rio, I understand Valve's standpoint on wanting to do like a lot of teams playing everybody to kind of keep the finger on the pulse and see just how everybody matches up. But online Counter-Strike...
Can I just quickly interject there? This is something that I just heard about and it hasn't been announced yet. At least is not known officially. So I'm just not gonna call anybody out. But considering what I've heard, the thing about Valve requesting either round robin or Swiss in the RMR events is not true.
That's good news. So that for the future ones could be completely different. We don't necessarily have to run those formats.
Swiss is a lot shorter than a round robin with the way that the ESL1 Road to Rio was done would have been definitely a lot shorter.
If I also can just say something, because like what I feel like, or at least from my standpoint, I don't mind personally that a CS match takes 4 or 5 hours, because for me, I love CS that much that I don't really mind spending all that time. But if we want to, like now we see, especially in Denmark, we have like on national television, we're showing all the matches, etc. If you want to get like newcomers on board, etc., I feel, of course, I can, like, this is not taking into account technical issues. Like we have to scratch that, like it doesn't exist in this conversation. But I mean, if a normal best of 3 can take 4 or 5 hours without any technical issues, that is just way too long. Like, I mean, like for the generic viewer experience to watch it on the television. And if you want to take CS or esport as a whole to a new level, you have to keep within some time restraint, because otherwise you're only gonna keep the hardcore fans there.
Yeah. I'm just gonna put like some more context on the data that Prof was talking about, right? The 1 hour average duration that we have these days, or have had these days, like at the latest majors, that is like around 27 rounds per map on average. So imagine like when maps go to like at least 1 overtime, we're probably reaching like an hour and 15 to hour and 20 minutes. You get like crazy matches where it's like 4 overtimes and you get into like over an hour and a half long matches, whereas just a single map where you have barely any breaks between, you know, rounds or halves or anything like that. So just to throw that out there.
Yeah, so this is a very good point that Rejin brings up, right? Is because we have to think about this. The hardcore, everybody probably listening and tuning into this podcast right now, you're probably a hardcore Counter-Strike fan. You probably have no issue watching an entire day of CS because you love the game. It's something that is very important to you. Now, that's great. And hardcore fans, you're the bread and butter. You're the people who, when I'm doing my job, I'm trying to mainly focus on, right? But we need to consider all these other individuals that Rejin's talking about who are out there, because if we want the viewership base of our game to grow, we need it to be more digestible. So I personally think that it's a difficult balance. It's not an easy one. It's like when I'm up there and I'm talking about the nuance of Counter-Strike, I should really dumb it down for new viewers, but I don't, because I think that that's selling you guys at home and myself short here if I was to just talk about, I don't know, fucking crosshair placement, for example, right? But with all these different factors that we have to consider, and also with match length, I can kind of, I'm not going to speak for TOs, but I can speak with my experience behind the camera, right, and seeing what happens. So like brackets, or the amount of games played in a tournament, or the amount of time that they have to show on air, or did I say brackets? I meant breaks, or like the half-time break, or all those bits and pieces. That is how companies make their money, because they sell on the advertising space. That's why we have desk segments. That's why we do all these other bits and pieces, because they need to generate the income in that way, right? So all of that adds to the length of days. If we're doing a day, thank fucking God we don't do days that are 4 best of 3s anymore. We should never, ever, ever, ever go back to a day where 4 best of 3s are played in a day. Like, that's not even a question. I actually also think that 3 best of 3s in a day is too much, because if I want to be honest, I don't think it's too much in terms of the Counter-Strike to watch. I think it's too much because we're offering a bad product. If we had less best of 3s in a day and more prep time behind the camera and more time to actually be able to give a better product, where I could sit down and break some stuff down for you, and you have another guy come in and you have the coaches there for like a pre-game discussion or some shit, we could actually offer better content as well with less games in a day. Now, whether people want that or not, like, that's a question that I never know if we'll get to. But if we bring TV in and we bring Counter-Strike into this whole conversation, and we try and merge them all together for something that could fit for everybody, with Valve making every gun viable and the new economy system with the constant comeback mechanic, do you guys not see best of ones as more viable for earlier stages in a tournament? I agree that a best of 3 is best to determine who the better out of 2 teams, but a best of 1 now, when these games are so close, like, surely that's, I know we're getting to that later down the track, but surely that's like a way that we could help with some of these tournaments.
I'm getting to that point actually where I'm starting to see the brighter side of this discussion, just because obviously group stages in general aren't meant to be perfect, right? In general, like, if you look at basically any competition, it's not meant to be like a perfect way to find the best team, or like to order the best teams even at the tournament. It's just like a general, I guess, like a general way to just like sort the teams in like as close as possible, but it's never going to be perfect, just because the formats are just not used that way. We've maybe gone a little bit too ham on that aspect in CS lately, just because, you know, we've had some weird tournaments where like teams made each other way too early and stuff like that, and then things have moved that way because of it. But because of this, I'm starting to feel like best of ones aren't as big of an issue as I used to. I still, same as you say, I still agree that best of 3s are the best way to, or maybe not the best, like, I guess best of 5 would be the best way to legitimately see which team is better. But obviously, like, with the time constraints that we have, that's not going to be viable everywhere.
I just took answer with the best of ones. I don't see the problem per se in best of 3s. I think a best of 3 is better to see who is the best team, you know, because there can be like some teams are slow starters, you know, there can be RNG involved in one of the maps, etc., etc. Like, you can take those 2, for example. You hit a lucky shot through the doors as T side, you get B for free, and it's like, yeah, it didn't, like, if you see that round as a whole, it didn't
maybe
show
just
any
don't play
skills.
Dust 2.
That is a possibility. But I think best of 3 it is the best way to go. But what I think is we're forgetting here is the amount of matches and tournaments there is. And then you add on top of that a best of 3 and best of 5s all the time, you know? Then suddenly it's get way too much fed up with CS, you know? Like, I can be honest, I'm not watching as much CS as I used to do. Like, when there was these big tournaments coming up, like, yeah, it's nice. Now we had Pro League, Road to Rio, DreamHack, Blast, Road to Rio, blah blah blah. You know, like there's tournament on tournament on tournament, and when you have best of threes in every single one of them, it's just way too much CS. Like it doesn't matter if it's the best teams in the world competing or not, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important for a fan to be able to watch at least like a good majority of a tournament to have an idea of how the competition went, right? If a guy wants to watch a tournament, he should be able to watch enough matches, you know, to have an idea of why this team and that team is in the grand final or whatever. And that's just simply not possible, like especially with these online tournaments that are going on for an entire month and that have had like multiple simultaneous matches at a time. Then it's humanly impossible to watch unless you like don't sleep and just like rewatch whatever match you missed because another one was going on. It's just impossible to keep up. So I think like, that way.
I
like
wanted
to. You should have. No, sorry, Prof. Okay. So if you want to have best of ones, I think like the way Major did it with the Swiss system, and then you have the best of three when it counts when you go out or not. I think that is more appropriate to have it like that, because then at least you can say, well, we lost to the better team in the best of three. Like you can make upsets in best of one and all that. I don't really mind best of one that much, but you should never be able to go out on a tournament from a best of one, in my opinion, at least.
So I wanted to just touch on what Striker said, which I maybe don't agree on that much. Just knowing some people that are like semi-casual, semi-hardcore CS fans that watch CS like quite often and play CS, but they aren't like, I don't know, like super hardcore players or anything like that. So their approach is like they just watch the teams they like to watch, which can be like Fnatic and I don't know, like NIP, whatever, Vitality. Like those are the three teams they like, and they're going to be watching those games. Like for example, with Road to Rio, even if Fnatic is playing like the decider for 11th place, they're going to be watching that over like, I don't know, Astralis, mouse sports or whatever, just because they have a preference for teams. I think that is moving towards like a more traditional sports way, because if you watch the Premiership, there are like 4 or 5 games on at the same time, so you can't watch all. You can't watch all of Premiership either, so you're just gonna watch the teams that you like. So I'm not sure. Like for me personally, I like what you're saying, because I want to watch, like I want to know the whole story of the tournament. But it's not. I'm not sure that is actually a thing that is important for the scene or for more casual viewers.
I agree with that.
I think that's an important distinction, right? Like that kind of just took me back to going around to my grandma's house when I was a kid and watching the sports that they would watch. Like my grandma liked watching tennis, but she would only watch tennis when it was somebody who she enjoyed watching playing. Like she wouldn't just throw the fucking tennis on. Same with like Australian football. It's like as people from Western Australia, from Perth, we have 2 teams. So you'd usually pick one and you'd only really watch them play. You wouldn't watch the other teams play. Like you didn't really give a fuck. So that's a good point right there. I suppose like with how connected we are with all of our jobs right here, like you guys obviously doing all the coverage for HLTV.org and Rejin having to watch everybody and me having to watch everybody as well. It's just one of those situations where we are used to watching the whole tournament because we have to in a way, whereas that's probably not how most viewers would be digesting Counter-Strike. So I was having a quick little think there, and I think between all of us, with the amount we do watch and the amount we see in broadcasts, there's probably like quick fixes to shave seconds off of it, but probably at the end of the match it could add up to minutes. Like for one of them, the mechanic of, Reggie, you could probably speak to this. When the timeout is called, the freeze time will reset on the other side, right? So if you were to wait until freeze time had almost finished after the round had ended, then call the timeout, then the 30-second timeout happens, then the timeout finishes, there's another 20 seconds of freeze time, right?
Yeah, there is.
So like a quick way to fix that mechanic would be if we could get it coded so that as soon as somebody calls the timeout in freeze time, let's say they call it when there's 15 seconds left, then it'll just remember there's 15 seconds left. When the timeout ends, it starts from 15 seconds as opposed to 20, right? Like that means we won't have people double dipping on that extra time. And it's something which teams take advantage of because they can, right? It's not something which has to stay in place. That's just something because it exists. So of course they're going to use it. That's just the way it works. So that's one. Does anybody disagree with like changing that?
I think the reason why it resets is just for for maybe the other team that is maybe not that focused or whatever on what is going on, so they don't get caught off guard when the timeout finishes. But at the same time, I think you can make like a minimum. Let's say you call it last second of the freeze time, and then you just give the other team like 5 seconds of freeze time when it goes into.
To be fair, like by that 1 second when you call the timeout, like they will have been ready to play the round anyway. So I feel like it's not going to be make a difference.
It's like the 15-second thing, and then it's kind of I guess like I think people can get used to it. It's just like a bit of coding on Valve's side, and I think it should be addressed, just like clipping that time. It's not a big thing, but it adds up and it's kind of annoying.
I mean, the easiest fix is that if you want a timeout, you call it the round before, and the timeout is instantly from the next round. Because
that's fair enough, actually.
Because like if like I can see a world where you wait for 1 second, and like if you follow what you said, Chet, the timeout happened. The other team was not focused on that was called a timeout and how much freeze time that was left. Suddenly the round is down, and we just live, you know. So I see that as being a little problematic. But
well, the
I
problem
think
with
like
that in turn, I'm just going to interject for a second, is like, what if you decide to take the timeout like the second the round ends, just because the round didn't go your way? You need to call the timeout, and you only have whatever it is now, like a few seconds to actually call it, because the time span between the round end and the next round starting is so short. So that would cause problems there, just because you probably wouldn't be able to call it, especially if it came from a coach who can't even call for timeouts, you know?
If the coach was the one, I actually think the coach should be the one with the power to call the timeout.
Yeah,
like the coach should have some fucking button, like a big red fucking button, bang, like something, just so like the coach can have power over that, because he shouldn't have to be like tapping the in-game leader and say like fuck timeout, shit like that. Like
and then the in-game leader is like, nah, it's all good,
yeah,
man.
Like that would tilt me as a coach. Like the coach should probably have power in that regard. So that could be a fix, but you'd need to make sure that all of those things were possible there. Do we have any other thoughts or quick fixes? Maybe not around timeouts. Is there like obviously minimizing the amount of technical delays is huge, but that's not something that isn't really in our control here.
And it's something that people are working towards constantly anyway. So I feel like it's not worth talking about really.
No, we cannot control it in any case.
Yeah.
So I guess the other bits and pieces here that we could look at, people would probably suggest like don't have the halftime break. Well, we need to have the halftime break, guys. Like they have to roll ads in that time. That's part of the deal. Like
a lot of people don't understand, because like for me as well, being in a poor country, watching Twitch and maybe having ad block, maybe not. When the halftime rolls,
for legal reasons.
When the halftime rolls, all you see is just like, I don't know, the city of Cologne, random like ticker on the bottom for 3 minutes, and then you think like, why are they doing this? There are no ads here. But the thing is, like, they are playing Twitch ads at that time, so that is the thing. That is why they're doing it. So, and that is the kind of the peak, maybe not the peak. The peak is probably towards the end of the map, but that is like very high viewership, like concurrent viewership in that moment, and not like when the map finishes, then it automatically is just going to drop like 30% probably. The last kill, 30% people just close the
I also think that it's kind of important for teams, and Rejin, you can probably attest to this, for teams to have a bit of a break so they can talk through the next half. Because of course they're going to talk about the entire match like ahead of time in the match prep and stuff like that. But I'm sure it's worth, you know, repeating some certain like whatever is going to happen in the pistol round and stuff like that. And you want to have like more than just like those 20 seconds in freeze time for those kind of things, just to prep the entire half in like a short minute or 2 minutes or whatever the halftime break is. So I think there's two ways to this as well. So I don't think that's where we should look to changes.
I mean, like the break between half times and maps is something you cannot touch, in my opinion. Like I think it's needed to be there for the flow TV, etc. There is TV rights now you have to respect, and you have to be able to insert a certain amount of advertisement, etc. But I think you have to look at CS, like what Prof said in the beginning with the statistic. Why is it that it has increased so much? Because like adding 5 seconds of freeze time more, you can multiply that yourself. I'm not doing the math right now. And also with the bomb timer, 5 seconds more, meaning longer retakes. I don't believe that adds up to half an hour. Like I think you have to look at why is it we're going into a map that is lasting 1.5 hours without any technical difficulties? And that is because like oh wait, I'm gonna start and ask a question here. What is the desired amount of time a Counter-Strike match should take? In my opinion, it's around 45 minutes to an hour. I want to hear everyone else.
I would agree with
I
somewhere around
wholeheartedly
that
agree
time.
with that.
Yeah.
I think that 45 minutes to an hour for one map of Counter-Strike, when you consider there has to be a break between the first and the second map, there's always going to be a little pre-show, like a pre-game, and there's always going to be a little post-game segment, right? Like that's all, unless the majority of broadcasts are going to go like that. So that gives, it fills the time that the players have the break after, it builds into the game when the players are setting up, and it's like 45 minutes to an hour, I think is perfect. Half an hour I think is too quick. I think anything sub that, we're starting to get a little bit ridiculous. But
I mean,
yeah,
we saw like in Odense when we played EG, it was like 23 minutes of a match. So.
Oh, that's right, Nuke. Yeah, nice quick one. Mate, those were the.
There.
I mean, even that took like 35 minutes or something. It's not not massive of a difference if you go like 16-2 or whatever and 16-10. Like it's going to be like 10, 15 minutes.
I think it goes without saying, though, and Rejin, you once again probably the best person to attest to this, that so many more teams at the moment are playing percentage Counter-Strike in an Astralis-esque way, right? Like they're milking the ecos, they're taking almost the entire time, like to bait out utility, to try and get any kills they can just with Glocks. We're seeing teams who understand that faster style of Counter-Strike, it can obviously shell shock your opponent, but it's not going to lead to consistent results. So obviously we heard from Prof at the start saying it's only one round or 1 or 2 rounds more, but the sample size isn't huge with the new economy. But it feels like with the new economy and the comebacks looking more and more often, at least from the eye test, and then teams playing a slower brand of Counter-Strike, that in my mind is enough to contribute another 10 to 15 minutes, plus obviously the more freeze time, the more round time, the more bomb time. People now don't have any problems waiting in retakes. Like your boys are a perfect example. When we spoke to Carrigan and he's like, yeah, they say there's always a chance. So you guys just hang around, like when the bomb's down, you're just fucking chilling out. You're like, well, we might go for it. We might not. We don't know yet. So like that's all added a lot of time. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. But it adds a lot of time. But I also think it elevates CS with skill wise to have this extra 5 seconds to retake. You can plan, you can coordinate, etc. So I don't think it's there you have to cut in, cut it in. And I also think like when you see a match going 16-14, I don't think that we go over an hour, do we? Now someone have to correct me here.
What? Sorry.
Like if we just play. Like in the average matches ending 16-14, how long is those matches?
That's about, because the 60-minute thing I was talking about earlier, or Prof was talking about, that's 27 rounds on average.
60 minutes, 27 rounds average.
Yeah, so like a little bit over an hour would be like a full 16-14 match, like an hour and 10 minutes maybe max.
Yeah, well then then we are almost at the next topic for tonight.
like I'm looking at some map links from the Starladder Major. I'll go with like a 16-11, two 16-11 Renegades G2, 16-11, 60 minutes, 62 minutes, and 55 minutes for a 69. And then just above that, like 2 spots, Crazy Astralis. I think this was Dust 2 game.
That's the mega overtime, right?
60 rounds. 125 minutes.
Oh my god!
But I believe that.
But I mean, this is an outlier, obviously. So I don't want to interject this into like the discussion, but it's just funny because I saw it right here.
But I mean, like the matches you actually said there were all technical difficulties in that match.
Yes, I believe probably not the best one.
But that's the thing. Like majors in general have a lot of technical difficulties.
PGO
yeah, but I think we have to cut that out of the equation when we're taking it into account.
Yeah, because it's hard to get the data.
Of course it is, but I in my honest opinion, like when I look at scrims and stuff like that, when we play full 30 rounds, I know it's a bit different because you're not, like you're saying, Chad, you're not milking out every possible way, but in average we finish the match around 45 minutes, 50 minutes playing 30 rounds. So I mean, there's of course gonna be extra added, and this is by the way with 20-second freeze time and me pausing because there's not completely understanding the tactics after pause, non-pause, stuff like that, or people are late, etc. But we always manage to play one scrim in 1 hour, and that's full 30 rounds. And I know there's a lot of different things coming in, But that's at least my data that I see every single day.
But that's the thing. Like if it's 50 minutes for 30 rounds, then you add the 3-minute break in halftime, and then you add like maybe like a small delay.
You can add 4
small
minutes at least for
technical
tacticals.
Yeah,
you
then
probably don't use as
tacticals,
many
then
when
a
you're
bit
close.
more like slower pace,
Yeah.
maybe saving, maybe going for
But that is actually my point. Then suddenly you go to 60 minutes in average, in my opinion, and then you can like talk about overtimes, because I feel like when you put in overtimes, that is where the biggest issue comes into play. Like I'm not, just so people sit at home and don't go full crazy. I love overtime games. I love when it goes the distance, like really, But I have just, like, I put on my Twitter, like I said, like for fun, like let's say the first 2 maps could actually end in a tie. That is a way to deal with the overtime issue and still have a possibility overtime on a third map.
I think the issue with that is like the T and CT sidedness of maps, because let's say you 15-15 the first map, like that is fair, that is nothing problematic about that. The problem is then you go on the second map, and actually, yeah, it would have to be another 15-15 to go to the third map. But if you win, like,
well,
whatever,
that depends on the rule set you put, no? Because you could argue first map is a tie, so the one who wins second map, they're just up 1-0 then, and then the third map is a decider, meaning that the other team.
So then they would
win
have
that.
to play over.
I mean, like,
then...
this is of course a little bit weird. Let me try and
Sure.
explain, like,
Yeah,
the thought process that I did. So what I was thinking is that you had a tie in the first map. Team A then wins second map. Team B then win third map, and then you go directly to overtime after that. That is one way of doing it, because then also when you think about it, the last map we are playing is like it's not
the middle ground map.
It's the middle ground map, yeah. So it should be like a really. It's not like the one team picked it or not, like it's the one that's left over that everyone is fine to play with. So in that regards, I think it could be fun. But then of course you could argue, well, we won 16-4 and they only won 16-14. Why are we going overtime? Well, you're doing that just because, like you're saying, Prof, there is CT-sided maps. So you have to delete the round difference there.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think of it from the perspective of your wish is to I guess, is to eliminate overtime on the first 2 maps, and then to not have that part, then only to have overtime on the third map, which kind of like it can help for the matches to not go like super long, which is difficult for like broadcasts and TV rights and players as well, if you have like 3 overtime games and stuff like that. That are the 6-hour games.
This, in a sense, would also put more emphasis on the third map, though. So like vetoes would have to change and stuff like that. So I'm not entirely sure that this would be the way to go.
I mean, isn't that also just I think it's up to the teams, also like to know that this could be a possibility, and it doesn't really change much. If you think about it, it doesn't really change much. Like the third map would probably be the same, and if you then go to an overtime there, then it will like be the same that you did on map 1 or 2.
Yeah, I just don't understand why it would have to be. Well, I guess I understand. It's just I don't know why it would have to be the third map where the overtime is, instead of like the map where the teams won 15-15 beforehand. Why does it have to be the third map and not one of the others? I guess because
it's more just to cut down these overtime happenings. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think it was NIP Face.
Yeah.
In the Road to Rio.
All 3 maps
like,
overtime.
Of course, as a hardcore CS fan, I love it. It's like, yeah, more, give me more, But as a average viewer and for Flow TV and all these things, it's ruining everything. Like if you want to evolve this to a more like sustainable and more profitable.
Well, to be fair, like there are sports that are capable of working around this, even though they have nowhere near any set like amounts of time that they take up. Like a tennis match, for example, like it can take a very different amounts of time for it to play out. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily such a big problem for TV.
I just want to say that the issue with this, like Rejin's thing, is that essentially it's even harder to have a 2-0, which essentially just makes matches longer, because if it's 15-15 and then one team wins in overtime, then you can just 2-0 if you win the second map as well. And if this tie thing happens, it essentially means that there are going to be 3 maps played, however you turn it around. So that essentially just makes the whole match longer, like if it's a best of 3 or whatever. So
okay, but put it in this perspective, Prof. Yeah. So that's maybe true that we're always gonna see 3 maps, but at least that time has been served. Like, you know how long 3 maps is. Let's say it's 1 hour per map, so we set off 3 hours, 3.5 plus pregame and after whatever. So you know that there's 3 hours because it's rarely taking longer than that, because we're gonna get 3 maps most likely, and there's not gonna be overtime on map 1 and 2, but maybe on map 3, you know. So
let me just get this straight. You were saying that even if the second map didn't go to overtime, you'd go to third? Like if first map goes to overtime, second map somebody wins, and then you go to third anyway?
I mean, there would not be overtime on the first and second map.
What he's saying is that if in either of those series, right, if it's a tie in the first or second map, that map is basically, it never happened, right? Because
it's nullified.
Well, and then you look
the problem
at
with that I have with that is the point that I was getting at is what happens if you tie on the first map, Team A wins the second map, but Team B wins the third map.
Then you go into overtime.
You play overtime,
and then that
overtime
anyway? is the decider. Let's say.
I don't see. Yeah, okay. That's back to what I was talking about earlier. I just don't see why it should be played on that map instead of the first one where the tie was,
because
and where it wasn't like, you know.
Because that's because you have the third map as a middle ground. You're not gonna play
but like
overtime
one team already won the middle ground map, so like why does it have to be played there? You know, so that's what I'm getting at.
This is purely hypothetical. It's just to see how we can cut down, and I see overtimes being a massive deal there. Like I think that's one of the things that is taking the most time at all.
But to be fair, like overtimes aren't that commonplace in general. Sure, we've had a lot happen recently, just because like Road Trio, Vitality played like 3. Yeah, Vitality Nip was the game, right, that we were talking about.
Yeah,
where they played overtimes in literally every single match. NIP played like 4 overtimes in the match before that and stuff like that. But I'd have to get some data on this to have a better view. But overtimes aren't as commonplace for me to believe that this is a massive issue, especially when it's multiple overtimes happening. Like one overtime you usually see, but it usually, at least from the eye test, seems to be resolved after 1 overtime. Like rarely do we go to 2, 3, 4. Those are quite rare. So I'm not.
But
I don't think they're. Of course, when you do it, just creates a really big rift.
Let me give you an example of a company who tried to, and look, I consulted for free because I'm a fucking idiot, but I consulted for free with Blast in the very beginning, right? And they were like, look, we want to keep it to this, and this, and like this is what we have in mind, and this, that, and the other. And I was like, look, if you're doing a round robin group stage, first of all, I obviously can't make you change that format, but they're like, how do we avoid like having overtimes? And I was like, well, it's a round robin group stage. You don't actually need overtime. They're like, okay, because Moses and I were there, I'm pretty sure. But like, you can just have draws, and obviously a lot of people didn't like the draws. A lot of people didn't like. But as far as formats go, I'm not going to lie. The majority of people out there have no fucking idea. Like the majority of people at home watching don't even understand the format. The shit only gets amplified when people who have bigger platforms complain about things and say that it doesn't have, you know, competitive integrity, all this kind of shit. I understand all the arguments in round robin. I get all that. But in terms of what Blast were trying to do from a standpoint of an entertainment product, having draws in an arena so that your schedule for the day doesn't run over and your entire product doesn't get completely fucked, that to me, as a person who loves Counter-Strike and also understands the fact that business and compromises have to be made, seems fine, right? Like, this is where it comes down to defining the entire circuit of Counter-Strike and what we think is how we personally, like, because we're having a discussion right now, think everything should land. Because once you do that, you can then define how many matches are in a tournament, how many teams are in a tournament, from where do they come, do we want to keep it regional based? Like all of that stuff is a broader conversation when it comes to working out, slotting it into a time frame. But it's clear to me that the changes that we've made in the server settings with the way that teams are now playing more percentage Counter-Strike has definitely in some way added to longer games like that, as and the economy.
I think the economy is the big elephant in the room.
Yeah, and the economy, unfortunately, and Prof and Striker will remember, because as soon as the economy changes happened, I was basically yelling from the rooftops about how much I fucking hated it. I was at like
nothing changed till this day. Nothing changed.
I still hate it.
Everything's the same.
And I was there like with players at like one of the Blast events, the one that we did in Brazil. I think that was
Sao Paulo. I remember.
And I'm at breakfast and I'm talking to these guys and I'm like, "Do you guys understand what this means for the game?" And they were like, "Oh, we haven't really looked at it." And I was like, "No, but like Like, let me explain the excitement curve to you. And I try curve to them so obviously before double ecos on the CT side, that's bad. We don't want that. Like, don't get me wrong, we definitely don't want that. But the excitement curve in Counter-Strike used to be if a clutch was won at an integral point in the game, not only would you win that round, you would have a flow-on effect. Now, I'm not saying that you should be rewarded with 2 free rounds or anything like that, but it puts more pressure in a clutch situation. What am I fed up of fucking watching at the moment? Saves. Because every round is just as important. But if one round was more important than the next, if you lost it, you'd be more inclined to go for a retake, which means more excitement, because I can foreshadow for the viewer what that means from an economy perspective. The players understand what that means. So the excitement curve in the game and in certain rounds, it actually ramps on up. Whereas our game right now, the first half basically doesn't fucking matter. The first half unless it's a blowout, does not matter, because the second half, what happens is somebody gets like a lead, and then the other guys have the fucking blue turtle mechanic, and they're constantly buying on the T side. They're just keeping one CT alive every single round. They're constantly forcing AKs and dropping it across, and then as soon as you win that round, CTs are fucked. CTs have to double eco, or they take a single eco, which is basically the equivalent of taking 2 ecos anyway, and then you're just as many rounds in the fucking hole. The new economy system is dumb. It's fucking stupid. And it should never have come in the first place. I don't know how this even got suggested. And the fact that it's been here this long is ridiculous, because the economy was one of the most important parts of the game. And now it is one of the least important parts. And I just fucking, I really, like, I don't like it. I've been saying that from the very beginning. No, and the fact that coming to me was in reply, oh, we get more gun rounds.
To be fair, Chad, I think it's not about the lack of more ecos or like the lack of economic impact. It's about the lack, or I guess about the increased power of various like force buys and stuff like that.
But this is because like, you only get these force buys because of the economy. Like, well, before you would not buy a deagles, just like okay, put it this way: the terrorists lose first round, they buy up. The third round, they buy a lot of deagle because they can. Like, I mean, like, and every single round there is possible to win because maybe you're lucky one shot, you know? Suddenly the snowball effect starts. I remember the match against EG referred to earlier when we won 16-0, yeah? If they had won one round, we would have been, it was a completely different story, because they only, like, we won some mental rounds we should never have won, but that also meant our economy was so bad as CT, meaning that the terrorists were
but what is bad about that? Like, wouldn't you as EG coming close to winning so many times be rewarded for actually winning after all of those fails?
No,
you got close. No. That's the economy. That is the economy.
But then
you are fighting for
the economy. Misunderstanding it. Yeah, but okay, so you see
like killing a game four CTs 5 rounds in a row, and that guy
to do that 5 rounds in a row, being able to have a buy that is just as threatening as the CTs every single time.
That is a different thing.
You should never be able to have that.
But you would have that at any point, though. That's not where the economy changed at all. You would keep having those buys all the time if you keep losing.
Yeah, but it's then you put it. Okay, Striker. Then you forget about this, because then let's say we're talking 6-0. And by the way, I'm totally with.
Well, that's where nothing changes right at that time. Like, everybody at that time at 6-0. Whoever's on the 0 side, that economy for that guy didn't change.
No, but then you're forgetting this, Striker. You're forgetting this. Then let's say they do win one round, yeah?
Yeah, it's different. Like,
then let's say they do win one round, and the CTs are saying, okay, we can money fuck. Sorry for the F word.
You can say whatever you
want.
I
know.
Man.
I'm just trying to be less chat, you know. So you can then money fuck them back by winning that round. Which then you have to make a major decision as CT, especially if you've been bullied around economy-wise. So you have to think, okay, we can force this up, maybe win, and then completely ruin their economy, or we can take a save. And that part there you don't have now, because now you just be like, okay, we just buy again, you know, because it doesn't really matter. Like, I completely agree with Chad. I hate this money system. Plus, it's never, you know, you never get rewarded for being smart with your money, in my opinion. Like, there is not this. You remember back in the day, probably, Chet, when you were playing also, like, suddenly you were surprised with a suddenly AK or something, you know. I remember when Navi did that 1.6, dropping AK suddenly in like second round, like, whoa, who does that, you know? Like, you can become so much more smart with this economy, but also get more punished by it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying here, like, I feel like even today, the issue with this economy is that it feels like you can never have like a complete read on the opponent because of these like resets that are going, even though now you can literally press tab and press the use key and like hover, and you can see like how many rounds, who died, how many people stayed alive. You can see the loss and everything. It just, I don't know if maybe it's just me, but I feel like players as well don't have the grasp on when an eco is happening, and because of that, then you don't have this. People don't play properly because they don't know what they're expecting. And then you don't really have the surprise factor because no one's expecting anything. Everyone's expecting everything in every round. So that's the kind of the randomness factor that has been introduced with the let's say, I don't know, killing the reset of the economy, right?
Let's add this into the mix, guys. How many guns in the game do you think have no competitive viability, right? I don't even know how many weapons there are exactly, but I think maybe 5 or 6 guns that I would never see used.
Thrown out.
Right?
Like, let's say
probably
some of the probably most of the shotguns outside of like the auto shotty, that's very little. How many shotguns are there? Nova, sawed-off, auto shotgun. Is there anything
7.
else? There's Max 7 that's also not used. So 3 out of 4 are not used. And then
Max 7
the 2
and the sawed-off is the same thing, right? It's just like CT&T. So.
yeah, sure.
So that's 3 dualies and the 2 LMGs. So that's 6.
Revolver.
Yeah,
and but that's not even like it's
sure, but it's like a replacement for a deagle, sure.
Okay, so like every other gun in the game at some point is competitively viable, right? If your economy is fucked and you have to opt on a fast strategy to go for a Mac 10 as opposed to an AK, you're set. You are set. You have a good spawn. You understand how to use the gun. It's good. You have a 5.7 on a 4-spy with a smoke on the CT side and you play around the smoke well, you're getting multiple kills if they come to you, right? Like all of these weapons are viable in different ways, and that's what Valve have wanted to do. They've wanted to make as many guns viable as possible for different circumstances so that you as a player have more options for tackling scenarios. So that is no problem. I think that's great. But factoring that in with the new economy, meaning you can buy something of worth almost every single round, do we want that to be the case, right? That's the question. I personally, obviously I'm an old dog, but with the amount of rounds that we have played, that factored in the fucked up money, because we're going to get into next MR12 discussion. So we should probably get Alchemist at some point to give the explanation to all you fucking Zoomers out there. But we're not talking about MR12 because of Valorant, right? You can have your Valorant discussion and shove it up your fucking ass. In Counter-Strike, we have used more formats than that game was even a fucking thought in anybody's fucking mind ever. We've used we've had charges only, we've had MR12s, we've had changes in round time, we've had changes in bomb time, we've had changes in all of this shit. So you guys can fuck off with that argument because you don't understand what you're talking about. But right now, because we'd hardly have double ecos, right, and the economy and every weapon is viable, with all those things like that, an MR15 game now drags out a lot longer. MR15 was brought in as an adaptation of MR12 because of how hard you would get punished before. So you needed more rounds because you needed more gun rounds. You don't need more gun rounds now. It does not need to happen.
Also, just like to point on this, the difference now, at least it feels, to 1.6 when people went for MR12 to MR15 is that MR12 and MR15 were things you could set up yourself in the server, and you couldn't really change the whole fucking economy and add like reset bonus and like all of these things. And I guess now Valve is pretty receptive to things. Like I think since CSGO overall, they have been slow but receptive. Like when people didn't like things, when discussions were had, like just go back and look at the updates and see, like, everything has been changed in the game. Literally everything that is in the game, the shooting in the game, like the tapping burst spray update, the pistols, the economy, like everything. So they have been receptive, and that's why now when they change this, then we can now think about the possibility of, is maybe MR12 enough? But if I may digress, because YoFlow in the chat, biggest mouse fanboy, made a joke about Chris J playing with the deagle, and this is the thing, we even saw Chris J in overtime, first round, buying a deagle, CT side, playing deagle only. So what the fuck is that? And is the deagle overpowered?
I mean, so how can I say that without going into much detail? But I just to take that round specifically, it was a mistake to buy only Deagler. He should have bought whatever he wanted. What you can argue is that he can then second round, if you lose a lot of guys, buy Deagler only there, because then you would have money for an AWP on the third round, because you only have 10k, not 16k. But well, with the Deagler thing is something we're testing out to see if the economy can change, suddenly get the price up, etc., because of this money situation we're having. Because not every round you like, it sounds weird this I'm saying right now, but you don't really need to win every round because you don't get punished that much, you know. Like the comeback mechanics are so strong. Like you don't have to fight for every single round, like, because like Striker, like Chad was saying, oh, they got B, we have 4 guys survived, let's just save because our money is so ridiculously good, you know.
I mean,
so,
isn't that more like the opposite then? Like, because that's, to me, is a smart decision to take.
No, but you're
just
not
because
fighting
you're not
for
going to go.
everything.
No, but you're not going to fight
not
for it
fighting
because
for
there's no
anything.
reason to it. Because, like, let's say Inferno is a perfect example. How many times do you see 3 CTs saving because they got B, or 3 CTs saving B because they got A earlier, or something like that, where it was a possible retake? Like it was maybe a 40-60, but you won't even go for it because, well, if we save now, our money is gonna be completely out of control. Like it doesn't matter if we lose or win, because we're always gonna have full nades, full weapons, no matter what. We're not gonna get punished.
I honestly think that has more to do with people being smarter about retakes and playing better, like these situations.
Not at all.
Like
100% not at all.
I feel like just because teams have already done this before the economy change, have started doing this way more on maps like Inferno, especially, where they lost one guy on Inferno and started stacking A immediately just because they knew if they just lose the site, they'll just save in 4 people and have a buy next round. That like this kept happening way before the economy changes came in. And I don't think it's changed that much.
But
after
the thing is here, the thing is here, you don't get punished by it now. Like you would get punished by before, because you wouldn't get all these rounds that you would need, because suddenly you lose a round and you're completely money fucked. You know, and you wouldn't have these make or break round like Chet is saying. Like
I think there's still those are. I've seen like so many of these, especially like in the last, like in the playoffs, like in the what was it? Not the G2 Australia's game. Well, in the G2 Australia's game, there was actually one round on Nuke where
I'm not
this
saying
wasn't
it's not
entirely
happening. I'm just saying the majority of this is gonna.
I feel like this is taking things out of proportion just because the mechanic does not occur nearly this much like in most matches, like because either things are so lopsided that it doesn't matter, like there's no like slider or anything like that going back and forth, that it like this new economy doesn't even come into perspective, and it only comes in when the comeback like starts happening, you know, because and the other team wins again. Like but that's the only place where it changes.
The comeback is only made possible in certain scenarios because of this. So let me give you a perfect example. Let's say that the CTs are up 6-0 and they're not even winning, like the rounds aren't even that close. Let's say they're winning with 2 to 3 players alive every single time. The Ts are consistently getting the bomb down, so they're still being able to be threatening every single round of the game, right? Then, as soon as they win that round, the CTs, regardless of new or old economy, will be completely reset down to 1400, right? Like that is just what's going to happen regardless. So now the Ts are going to either go up against a force buy or they're going to go up against an eco. So they're at that point of the game guaranteeing themselves usually a 2 to 3 round chunk. Then if they win the next gun round, the CT-sided loss bonus hasn't even built up to a point where they can still be threatening, right? That would happen in either version of the economy. But the thing that happens now is you are seeing halves that start 6-0 and then end probably 8-7, right? Because it takes so long for the other team to get back on their feet. Whereas before, what would happen was, let's say it was old economy, if you were up 6-0, you lost 3 in a row, you had a buy eventually going, and you won that round, okay? You would reset them back down. You would reset them back down to, if they had won 3 in a row and they had the max loss bonus and we were using old school money system, you would have reset them back.
You'd only reset them if they like kept losing a lot of guns at that point. Like that's what I'm saying. Like especially if you get to
if you get reset their economy, Striker, you'd reset their economy. It doesn't matter that you wouldn't reset the residual cash they had. You'd reset their economy, which makes them less threatening for future rounds if you can convert.
But
right?
If you think about it, that only affects like the last 2 or 3 rounds, not like the majority of the half. Like it
but
just.
That is why.
But that's also a major difference going 9-6 or going 8-7. That's a massive difference.
Sure, it's a difference, but I don't think it's massive, honestly.
I tell you, it's 9-6 to 8-7. Oh, that's a huge difference because suddenly you see the pistol round, and then it's 8-8, and it's probably also 9-8 and 10-8.
Tell me which map, and I'll tell you what difference it is. Give me a map and a side.
Look, I think ultimately this doesn't really matter, just because I think this has honestly not made enough of a difference time-wise for us to be talking about it in this context anyway.
Well, I think
at least
I'll just say this. If only the last few rounds are affected, then if we go to MR12, which is 12 rounds per half, because a lot of people don't even know what MR12 is, so it's 12 rounds per half instead of 15, and then the first team to 13 wins. If we go to MR12, then the new or the old economy, more or less, like the blue shell mechanic, will be deleted completely. Like, then you will only have the good parts, like when people get reset early, and then you can rebuy. Like, if you lose 3, win 1, lose again, then that's the good part of the new economy, that you can actually afford something after 1 eco, not double eco again. So to have that, and then in the end, this idea where the CTs get super money fucked, that will practically not happen. So I guess that is a positive for the MR12 if we have this new economy.
But also, I guess that's also this is why we have this conversation, because of the new economy that came in. It makes sense to go down to MR12. If we go back to our old economy, well, then MR12 is not
definitely
makes sense. Then we have to keep MR15. By the way, my wife asked, "Who is this Mr. 12?" So she didn't even know who it was.
There you go. That's a lot of people, right, who aren't aware of what that stands for. But what you just said there is exactly my standpoint, right? If we move with the current economy to MR12, I think that it works. I think it makes sense. I think it's removed a lot of the problems we had, and we still get an exciting game of CS. Like, people here are expecting it to take away such a huge chunk of rounds. It's not. It's not going to take away a huge chunk of rounds by any means.
No, like, if you look at the numbers, it's fucking 80%. Like, MR12 is 80% of an MR15.
And you're still gonna have these close games 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
So look, the thing is, I guess this is where we can have this conversation here, because we may as well talk about more to do with the economy. Because I've written down, I'm actually taking notes. This is the first time I've fucking done that on this podcast.
Oh, shit.
So the MR12 current economy, I wish that we had a way that we could like put in an algorithm with all different like outcomes of rounds to see how it would flow and how it would look, but we don't really have that as a possibility at this moment. I know ESEA did a free weekend on their thing that was MR12, so maybe I can get the data there, but it's obviously not going to be pro level matches. Like, I can ask, but if we were to do MR15. And we were going to use the old economy. This is an open question. The economy as it was before, what kind of tweaks would we be looking to make to that, or would we leave it as is? Because that's a conversation in itself.
Well, we've had that before, right? And then like, one of the things that I've always been kind of the proponent of was just removing the 1400 loss bonus altogether, which just immediately removes the need for double ecos most of the time anyway. Like, sometimes you're probably going to go for like a half buy to an eco or something, but that happens today anyway, so I feel like that wouldn't change much.
Can I just throw a question then? Does it matter we have these full ecos?
What do you mean?
I mean, I kind of enjoy it, no?
No, of course, but it's
like the full eco that is required you have if you want to have a decent buy. I think that's good. What I don't like is, we're having eco. By the way, I have de-glamour because I can afford. I think that you don't have eco, man. You can win the round suddenly.
So let me paint the picture. Actually, Prof, you had something there. Did you want to? Is that tack on to what Rejin just said?
No, I don't know. I was just laughing. I don't know what I was.
Okay. So
it's getting late.
What, like, my thought process, and I think I tweeted it out the other day, for the old economy system would be purely to just change the CT side loss bonus, right? I don't think do this pistol bullshit we have now. I never thought that was a good idea, because that makes it more confusing for the viewer. Having a different loss bonus just for the pistol round to me is just like, why are we doing this? Like, that's not fixing the problem. Let's have something which flows and makes sense. So let's say we went old money or old economy. So T side, if you lost the pistol, you got 1400, 1900, 2400, 2900, 3400, right? That's how that works. But if you plant the bomb, you get a plus 800. That's pretty good. You're incentivized to go for bomb plant. So what are we doing here, ladies and gentlemen? We're incentivizing the objective of the game. Now, by making it so that that is a core component and a core value of the game, I don't have a problem with, say, on a pistol round, if the Ts only get 1400 going into the next, but they're incentivized on the first 2 rounds of the game to try and plant the bomb so they have more money for their 3rd round. I think that makes sense. That as a thought process makes sense. The CTs, however, they don't have the same way to stimulate the economy, they also have more cost when it comes to general weaponry. So for the CT side, I would suggest that the loss bonus starts at 1900, because you lose pistol, you get 1900, you take a full save, you get 2400 as your loss bonus, which means you get 4300 into the first gun round, which with the change of price of the silenced M4 is a decent buy, right? That's a choice. You don't have to do that. You could lose pistol, you could take a deagle buy and then a deagle buy without armor, and then have a gun round in the fourth, and that's more choice. That's giving people more choice on how they want to approach the game. So it's enough that there's only one right answer. And the way that Rejin was saying it right now, it feels like there's only one right answer. And buy.
So you are saying CT always has 1900?
Always 19, and caps at 3900. Because 3900.
I actually agree with that for the T's to have a 1400, because if it's 1900, then we get into the situation we have right now, where the T force buy on the second round is just too good. I'm not saying it is, like, people overhyped it, how dangerous it was, but it's generally...
Well, that was with the Krieg, right?
With the Krieg, but it's the same thing with the AK almost. Like it's still a very powerful gun, and you can just throw around guns, have like Kevlar AK or like 5 Galeels or whatever. And I think with T's needing much less utility and having cheaper weaponry and everything, it's just too close for after you win the pistol round, you're not really getting rewarded if the T's forced by. It's just too dangerous in my opinion. That's why I think 1400 for the T side makes sense.
I also think, like, if you're doing that 14 for the T's, 19 for the CT, suddenly the pistol round is not that important. And as it was before, like, I don't know if you remember back in the old times, 1.6 or whatever, playing Nuke, very CT heavy favorite map. And if the T's won the pistol, they only needed like one weapon round to win, because that was enough. And that is not a meta I would like to see. I would like, it shouldn't have so much power or like the
impact.
Impact to win the pistol round. I do believe the pistol round is a very fun match to watch. I then was a little unpopular by saying it's RNG. I still believe it's super RNG, the pistol rounds. But I think it nullifies a bit the importance if the CTs can get 1900 and 1400 for the T. I think that's fine.
So just, I guess we can jump around here. There's no dramas. We're already an hour in, so fuck it. This will all just be a bit of a jumble with the pistol round one, because that was our next topic anyway. I may as well just bleed this across. I wouldn't mind just elaborating for. You can tell me if you agree with this or not, Rejin. But in the beginning, the argument about the pistol rounds, like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I remember reading up on it, and people were like, "It's a coin toss. It's 50-50. It's RNG." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, man, like, what do they mean? Because I don't think that at all. Like, I like pistol rounds. I like the dynamic of pistol rounds. I like that it's a risk. I like that there's not as much utility. Teams take more gambles. There's outside of the box. It's a different approach. It's not the same shit as every other round, right? And that's why, personally, I liked pistol rounds. But it took me a while, and I had to talk to Sean about it a lot, to get his version of it. It's a coin toss. And it's a coin toss because he's saying is there's no way of being able to adequately approach a round like that, right? Because you don't know what the other team's going to do. You could literally just do a rush on the T side. It's successful. The CT's rush up mid. Like, I like that fact, but a lot of people say that makes it random and it makes it a coin toss, which it does, because you don't have any expectation on a pistol round. You don't know what you're going to be looking at.
I have a good analog to like show why it's random. You take Inferno. The T's are rushing B. If you're playing default 2-3 as whatever, you're gonna die as CT. You're not gonna hold that as two guys. There's no chance of that. If you then gamble as CT on B, well, then you might win the round. In my opinion, therefore 50-50, because then you could argue that T's could rush A or we stack B. You know, for me, that's just like, that's not fun CS. Like, when you have
just
to
constant gambles. It's just constant gambles, and it depends like literally what the other team does, and you can't really look.
And I mean, like, I have been putting my mind to overdrive to figure out a way to really play the pistol rounds good, to get an advantage. And I also feel like we did that, like we have been doing that a lot, but I still see it as being super random. I mean, like, Kerrigan, when I tell Kerrigan, do you feel a deagle? Yeah, I take it. He goes out, one shot, 1 yard and train. Oh, suddenly we're in the round, you know? Like, what is that? Sorry to say. Like,
I'll just say I have proof that pistol rounds are not a coin flip, because coin flip, we know 50, maybe 55, 45, depending on the sample size. And actually, mouse ports are proving that it's not a coin flip.
You know, I actually did. Wait. I'm even gonna.
Sports
I'm gonna show
round
you
win
this.
rate among top 10 teams over the last 3 months is 34.8%.
But they always went on train CT.
Wait, let me put it like this, because I actually looked at every single piss round we had from Katowice, ESL Pro League 11, and Road to Rio. Okay, you want the correct statistics here? 100%. Okay. So in Katowice, we had where I took rounds. I looked at every single piss round, yeah, where we lost a 1-on-4, we lost a post plant where like we lose rounds we should never have lost. Okay. Like, so you have to take this into account. And I looked at every single round. In Katowice, we should have 65% win rate. If you take a look at, and our really was 40% win rate, by the way. But when I took into account all of
we should have.
Yeah, but like when you're like 4-1, we could all argue you should have won that round.
Yeah.
Like it's literally like these massive blunders we're doing. Then when you take like that, yeah. At Pro League 11. We had 54% win rate if we would have won all the rounds we should have, but in reality only 41, yeah. Again, like we were stacking 4 guys inside a nuke, they rush inside, we die. It's like, okay, did we do a wrong gamble? No, we played it right. We were guessing right, you know? So, like, if you look at that way, and then in Road to Rio, I actually made like a completely, like you show what happened around and everything, and in total, we were gambling correct of the time, 75% of the time, even though we couldn't win the round. We only had 58% win rate in pistol rounds in Road to Rio. I mean, like I did all the stats, looked all the maps, and it's like, yeah, you can have, you can gamble right, you can lose, and other things. For me, it's a huge coin flip. I'm not disliking pistol rounds or saying we should remove them. I'm just saying this is what it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's it'd be far-fetched to say that like to remove pistol rounds, just because they serve as a very good way, like a starting point for the economy, for like who takes the lead in a match, like why they take a lead in a match and stuff like that. I like that part a lot. I do agree that there could be some changes to it, and I liked particularly what you brought up, Prof, in the chats, like way before the show, like earlier today, which was the increase of the initial money to 950 instead of 800, just because obviously when you buy a vest, you have 300 left, right? So you have like a smoke on top, or like flash, one of the grenades basically. And on top of that, you can have more than just like a molly as a CT and molly and a flash or something, you know. I mean, you could have like maybe a molly and how does that kind of, yeah, a molly as smoke you can have on CT side. So I feel like that would actually make a lot of difference, just because, like, let's say you were talking about Inferno, right? On those gamble stacks, you can have 4-1, but that one guy on B has a smoke and a molly. One smoke to just like slow them down, and the molly to throw behind it if they choose to run through the smoke.
And then you will have a fair chance to actually
you have a fair chance to defend.
Yeah.
You have a reasonable chance to defend, especially like if you have like one guy cheating over to CT, just helping you like kill those guys that are running through a smoke. Like that's actually a reasonable chance of winning that round.
And you have, like, also a reasonable thinking retake. Like you could increase the money you start with to like, let's say 1500 or whatever, but you cannot buy anything else than pistols and grenades and armor and utility, you know.
But so but head armor as well.
See, that's the thing. Like, again, I'm just brainstorming. Like you could then block head armor. You could block all like anything else that is
head armor,
pistols. You can only buy utility kit, small armor, whatever. Yeah. And then when you go in the second round, like here's the big puzzle then that comes out, because then one guy could just have full eco, you know, and buy a rifle or something. But if you could then somehow nullify that, so you would actually only get like kill bonus plus the winning bonus for the next round, and then nullify the whatever leftovers you had. Like,
yeah, that's the biggest issue with changing the pistol rounds, because we want to, like, I think we as Valve or as like a game developer or anything, you want to set the rules and have them consistent throughout the game. And that's what SPUNJ said about like the economy after the pistol round being different than like after any other round is kind of dumb, and it's kind of confusing for a player. And that's why, like, when you really want to rethink and reshape the pistol round, it's very limited by the head armor and the ability to just save and go into the second round with extra cash. And if we do any of these mechanics, which you mentioned, which is something I also thought about. It kind of makes it too confusing, I feel like
that's true.
blocking out things and this. So I'm not sure that's the way to go forward. I think this with the 950, it's literally a comment I read, I think on HLTV or somewhere. So that I think was kind of okay. Maybe to try out, maybe not maybe we don't have to push it into CSGO right away, but I think it could be interesting, could offer a bit more, not variance, but the thing is, like, when you don't have options, you can't really show who the better team is. Then we go into the whole thing that we talked about earlier. You don't really have much to play with, and then it just comes to, like, if you're gonna time that grenade the right way or drop the smoke at the right time.
Reliability is what you're looking for. Like, it's going to become a little bit more reliable if you have a bit more to buy.
Because it would give people the option to prioritize different stuff, right? But the reason that I don't like 950 is probably and I can imagine the reason that you came to 950, but the reason I don't like it is, imagine the T side, 5 guys with P250 armor. Like, that right there is probably not a place we want to find ourselves.
I actually wouldn't mind that, because then you would have, like, the better aimers are winning in a way, and you'd have, like, these long duels. I wouldn't mind that as much.
Yeah,
but then I guess the CTs could counter that with more utility or something. Could be a bit overpowered, because, like, P250 body shots can be kind of deadly. But I don't know.
That's the only thing that I'm like,
or
a
maybe
little
just
bit
like
wary of.
Increase the P250 to 400 and you're
I
done,
actually
and
also worry about that all CTs can then buy body armor and a smoke. Imagine Inferno, man.
Yeah,
that's true. The thing. I think smokes in general aren't that strong.
They're not that
impactful,
rounds, no.
Because you can't spray down people running through smoke.
True.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like, now you also only have one smoke, no? So we never really see the benefit of 5 smokes. Or, like, you can have nades or whatever there. I mean, like, I think it's an interesting
fairly easy
idea.
to, like, to flash through a smoke as in pistols. Like, you're not going to be punished for that as much as you would in a weapon round. But I was saying, like, if you have a molly ready right behind that smoke, you know you're going to lose if you run through that smoke. Like, you're going to run into another molly or in a molly right after from a smoke, and you're just going to die. Somebody's going to mow you down in a normal round. That's not going to happen in a pistol. Like, you're probably going to be able to, like, take a shot on the pistol guy, kill him, especially if it's like Inferno B and you have a free sight. So,
but in a way, I still think like the best solution right now is literally what I heard from chat, like with the 1900 for CT and 1400 for the Ts, because it's not the pistol round itself that I'm against. It's the repercussion it does for you if you lose it. Like,
the repercussions of if you win the pistol round but lose the next round, to me.
Yeah, that's again.
That's the bigger problem.
But that's also because of the economy right now. Like, if the Ts had 1400 after losing pistol round, you could argue they could plant and then they could get more.
Yeah, sure, that's right. That's true.
But they will still not have enough.
But it works both ways, though. Like, CTs also get, like, a big advantage, especially on maps like Nuke, where you can just buy, like, pistols with armor and just stack the right side, and you're just gonna, like, they're gonna run into your crosshair like a crossfire, and you can win around off that if you get a little bit lucky. So I think that works both ways.
But I mean, like, that's also, in a way, we have to also be more lenient toward the CTs than the Ts, in my opinion, because the CTs are getting much more punished because you have to gamble right, like, in these rounds, because you cannot play default on a map like Nuke. You're saying, like, say, okay, you have yard and 2 inside, 1 ramp, 1 rotating. You cannot do that in these rounds. You have to gamble correctly. So I think, like, the repercussions for losing is much higher in as CTs than the Ts, because the Ts can control the pace, they can control where they're attacking. The CTs have to defend basically everywhere, and so I think, like, that is why it's okay that the CTs get a little help there.
But in theory, shouldn't the way the game works now, especially if you look at basically all maps where it's relatively close to 50-50, mostly towards the CTs, doesn't that make CSGO CT-sided in general, especially considering they have less economy than the Ts?
But shouldn't it be, like, this is the thing that I always find really confusing, and I don't like the fact that so many of our maps are, like, down the middle. I'm with Rejin, I don't like a fucking expected scoreline on CT side of Nuke of 12-3. I don't like that. That's just, back when we used to do it, I get it. It's like, because we were playing and we knew that if you had the pistol round and a gun round that you were super good on Nuke, but it's boring from a spectator point of view. I completely get that. But I think that when you're looking at Counter-Strike as a whole, when you look, fuck, I've lost my point. It's just left my brain. It left my brain.
CT
sided.
Like, you want more CT sided?
Oh yeah. I think that the Ts are the ones who have the ability to initiate. They're the attackers, right? So it should be on them to. It shouldn't be as easy for them. The CTs are the ones who have to stand and deliver, right? The CTs are the ones who have to hold back and get ready to fight them off. Now the Ts are the ones who have the option of where they want to send all 5 players, what attack they want to potentially have. And I'm not saying that means every map needs to just be extremely CT sided, but I think the CTs are the ones that we should be gearing towards to be winning the majority of these halves. Like I think that CT sided Counter-Strike is I don't know. I just think personally, the way that the game's built and the way that it's been for the way I've played it is that majority of maps should remain CT sided. I don't have a problem.
I don't want to like jump in on Rejin's point, but just saying like if you don't want to see CT saving all the time, then you want CT sided maps. Like the more T sided it is, the more you see like Dust 2, 3 guys sitting in pit. On vertical, you can't really save that easily. So I don't know what could like that. That's kind of just.
But I think like actually, if you take a map like Nuke is in a perfect state right now, in my opinion, because you can shut down on CT side, but it's actually viable for Ts if they have the right approach to actually get like 7 rounds. So I think Nuke is a perfect example right now.
The problem with what you guys are saying is that it's not really down to, well, I guess it is in general, but it's not. That doesn't pertain to the state of CS:GO now. It just pertains to the maps, how the maps are constructed. Just because Inferno, like, of course, it's going to be hard for you to retake if, like, you have fucking 3 guys on the other side of the map and you have to run for 20 seconds to even get to the other site. Same thing with Dust 2. You have 3 guys on long. You can't retake B, like a mid B split.
The thing is, like, even if you have 3 guys in CT spawn, you can't retake B.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't, if you're at a disadvantage and want to retake on Inferno B or Dust 2 B, it's just not going to work. Like, you can't. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's necessarily something that you can really help the CTs with too much, unless like you want to help, B guys defend B a little bit more so that they can take out more guys than just the one or whatever. So that like
But I also think like we're underestimating the collateral damage it would do if you change these economy things or the maps, etc. Like like the CS for me is in a good state if we were playing MR12. That's basically how I see it right now. If you want to keep as MR15, something needs to change if you want to lower the time of the matches. Like why we're talking to this, I saw a lot of new people are coming in. It's not because of like Valorant, it's just because that the game a BO3 can take 5 hours, and we would like to cut that down to a maximum of maybe 3, or let's just say maximum 4, like so that the average viewer could actually get a better experience, and there could be more prep time, like Tia was saying before, having somewhere else in, putting, like, if you need some time filling, interview some people, whatever, so I think like if you just want to reduce the times in the matches without doing too much experimenting with the economy, etc., the repercussion that can happen, I think that the rounds that we're having right now should just be lowered to a MR12.
Can I add on to that? Because as a coach, I just want to finish a point from earlier where I just used the time to make a joke on mouse sports. I want to just confirm that stats prove that more or less, except mouse sports who have 35% and Australis who have 62% win rate on pistols. This is last 3 months amongst top 10 teams. Like all of the other teams are between 45 and 55%. So that is the classic like coin flip percentage. So with that being said, if we go back to MR12, a thought that I had was with halves being shorter, does that mean that teams can have more like a shallower playbook on every map? Because you don't need to have that much diversity in terms of tactic and stuff like that, because even if a team adapts, you don't need to like readapt to their adapting like 3 times. You can do that 2 times and the half is over. So I mean, how that then plays onto everything else.
That will come down to when I'm watching demos, etc. Like I can sometimes when I see a smoke, I can tell you exactly what's gonna happen that round, So if you're only having a small playbook, you're gonna get punished instantly, because like if you have literally 3 plays to do, we're gonna be all over you. and I'm gonna find ways to disrupt that execute you have.
So you're saying like the demo watching is gonna cancel that doesn't really matter how many rounds. Like, let's say theoretically for a map, you're essentially prepared to play like 30 rounds per T side. Like, you have that much in your playbook. So shortening the actual half from 15 to 12 doesn't really make a difference, because you need to have that diversity to not be anti-stratted.
Yeah, for sure. That's at least my opinion. Like right now, even when people is when we're having these rounds, there are literally teams that are doing these 4 things all over again. Like I think actually a good example is ourselves on train. Like when like literally when chat is going up on the board and saying
Every
this
segment.
is what's gonna happen, they're gonna have a
Here
spot
you have a spot here,
you know, and the Kerrigan goes out. So the reason why we keep doing that is because no one really counter it, you know. Like, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know. But of course, the second people are countering it, we have 2-3 different variations of plays of the same play, you know, so they cannot see exactly what's coming, but they have to respect everything. And if that doesn't work, well, then we have 7 other tactics, you know. So if you're a one-trick pony, you're gonna get shut down by a team like Astralis, like that, you know.
It's also that I'm not entirely sure that like playing through tactics or coming up with them is necessarily a time consuming in general. Like, it's more the team play aspects and stuff like that that take a lot of time, and like playing a lot of matches on the map rather than, you know, the theory side of it, I guess. Like the pure theory, at least. I mean.
So just quickly, my Chrome's crashed. I'm not sure if I'm going to dip out here. I'm just going to keep going. I can't press any buttons or see you guys anymore. So like, we'll just do this in the dark because it doesn't really matter. Lucas can press the buttons
see and
for us.
hear you, so you're fine.
Okay, perfect. So we'll keep going with this.
If it crashes, you can just refresh and come back, whatever.
We'll see how we go. Okay, so we've basically digested a lot of points up into this, so I wouldn't mind just quickly rehashing just over the first 3 topics that we've had as a group here. So the match length, I think we all agreed, right? You guys can use the thumbs. I can't do it right now. We all agreed that we think that a match of Counter-Strike shouldn't be any longer than 45 minutes to an hour, right? In extreme cases, obviously. If you guys are doing a thumbs up. Huh?
He's already showing.
He's already showing a thumbs up. Yeah, okay.
Okay, cool. Because I can't see shit, so I'm in the dark.
Oh, you're not showing it on yeah, okay.
I physically can't press or do anything at this current juncture.
Lucas pressed it for you. You're good.
In my life. Okay, so we all agree that's the case. MR12. So MR12, this one here, Rejin said if we wanted to keep the economy the way it is, we should go to MR12. If we want to keep MR15, we should have some new version of the economy. Do we all agree with that as a sentiment?
Can I just say something just for people to understand
Sure.
just what the difference would be?
Sure.
And what I said in the chat earlier, it was that for an hour of an MR15 match, that would become like a 48-minute match in an MR12. So just for context wise, so you can see what the difference would be like.
So that means for like these MR30, MR15 maps that then go into 1 overtime or have a technical delay or something that becomes an hour and a half, then that in an MR12 can be an hour and 10 minutes, maybe, depends on obviously how it goes, maybe hour 15 minutes. So you get that a bit more bearable, palatable match length, I guess.
And that right there, for those people who may be just joining us, is to do with the viewability for maybe newer viewers. Obviously, the hardcores, we love it. Okay, so we're all kind of on the same page there. And for pistol rounds, it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody thinks that Counter-Strike and pistol rounds is part of the identity. So I think we all think that pistol rounds should stay a part of our game. Yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Like one thing that we didn't touch on, I think could also be explored, is just the mechanics of the actual pistols, especially like the USPs and the Glocks, especially the USPs. I feel like you see more like strafing USPs and like backpedaling USP headshots than actually people standing their ground and shooting. Like, not literally, it's kind of over exaggerating, but it feels kind of like the pistol rounds feel super slippery. And not really as like CS should be, like standing. I mean, obviously CSGO nowadays is a lot of like crouch spraying and shit like that, but the pistol rounds feel off to me still. So maybe that is something that can be changed instead of this thing that we had like 900, 950 or something. That could then change the whole dynamic of the pistol round in a better way.
I think it's just something that helps. There you go, Chad. There's you gone. I think. Okay, fuck. I just lost my point. Oh yeah, there you go.
Pistol rounds.
It's mostly I think that's mostly because of for CTs. What you're saying at least applies mostly to CTs, the backpedaling kind of thing and stuff like that. Obviously, that just comes from T's, running a lot of this like 5-man strats or like big crowd, strats where they just run into one side and just like run over one CT, that's defending there. That's basically why this happens, right? This wouldn't happen in normal pistol rounds, mostly because of utility and stuff like normal rounds rather, because of utility and stuff like that, and just T's have to hold their ground a little bit more. So I'm not entirely sure that there's something you can do about it without affecting the CT's ability to actually win those rounds.
Don't you think, though, it's kind of a good thing that we have a round like that in the game that is different? Like, I think that the starting point being a pistol round and the fact that it's RNG is actually great, because it means we go into every single game, and people love the underdog story. We go into every single game with the ability for even a team who is well and truly out of the ballpark of a better team to start off with a round victory. Because if we're saying, they play differently, they're maybe like, if the mechanics, you think the mechanics are broken, then that's like a different discussion, right? But if you think that the round doesn't play the same as a gun round, do we want it to play the same as a gun round?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of, like, I think back to like the Team Wolf, the Indian team playing the Cologne Major, was it? When they were coached by Kassad, and they played against NIP, who were at the time maybe not the best team in the world, but still like the most known team in the world and one of the best teams in the world. And they won, I think, both pistols or something. So they got like the first 2 or 3 rounds and was like, oh, maybe they can do something. Then they lost like the half 12-3 and then won another pistol round. And then you have that feeling that maybe they can do something. Obviously, we don't want to just give like the weaker teams like free chances to win, but it does really kind of balance it out. I think it really is a part of the identity, and it makes, as you said, it just like builds up the game and has like a different feel to it and everything. I think it would be super dumb just to start with full gun rounds. I don't know.
No. I competed in a time where we started with full gun rounds. So for people who aren't aware of my competitive history, I played in the Championship Gaming Series. The Championship Gaming Series was not much fun. They didn't do what people in modern Counter-Strike have done. They came in and they said, we have this game, it's very popular and it's easy to understand, but it's too long. It's too long, and fuck all your rules. Fuck your identity. Fuck anything to do with whatever you guys think is competitively viable. We're doing our own shit. So we did MR9, max rounds 9, which means you'd play first to 10, and the start money was 16 motherfucking K. Now, you want to know what overtime rules were, ladies and gentlemen? Because that's where we're moving next. Overtime was 1 round wherever you finished. So if you finished on the CT or T half, it didn't even matter what map it was. That's where you stayed, and then you played a pistol round. And whoever won or lost that round, that was it. That's how we determined the CGS.
That is essentially coin flipping with like a broken coin or something. So did people then pick like nuke T side to start? Because then
it didn't even work like that. Like the vetoes didn't even work in that regard. Like it was some weird shit. Like I know we played Berlin Alliance, which was Fifi's team, on fucking Tuscan. We started CT side Tuscan, and then we closed out the game in overtime, T-side Tuscan, rushing, doing a B rush as a split on Tuscan. That's how we won the game. And like, it was like, what are we even doing? Like, how is this a fucking rule set, right? Like this, but this has actually happened. So we're not ever going to go back to that bad of a state.
It was also broadcasted in third person, just going to say.
That's true as well. We didn't actually do any well, there was very, very little first person stuff. But anyway, let's keep it moving because I think I'm keeping Harry awake. He's just, Harry, it's all right, mate. It'll be done soon, all right? He's got ants in his room and he's
like if we just cut to the chase with the pistol round, I definitely think pistol round should stay. It's an integrity of CS. There's no reason to remove that. It's all about, for me at least, the repercussions in losing and winning a pistol round, stuff like that, when you're seeing the economy changes and all that. So for me, the pistol round should of course stay there 100%.
Okay, so we've covered that off. Let's move into overtime here because we're actually already an hour and a half into the show. So overtime is, for those people who don't know at the moment, for the majors, we use max rounds 3, which means first to 4, and we start with 10K. Now, just to rehash some of the iterations we've used in CSGO, ESL, traditionally, if it wasn't a major event, would be using max rounds 3 with 16K start money. And I recall Face It for a period of time, use max rounds 5 with it was either 10 or 12k start money.
12K,
I'm not quite
as
sure.
I remember.
I think it was 12. Yeah.
Okay, and that one there played out a bit differently. So just quickly to hash for everybody all of these different overtime rules. If we go with the ESL one, the MR3 16k, that basically removes, not completely, but almost completely.
Well, any economy decisions almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So at that point, what people are kind of who would make an argument for that being the best one, I'm just going to say what I would think the best argument for that would be, is that we've played 15 rounds, we played 30 rounds, sorry, of regulation on each side. Everyone's equal. You've had your ups and downs of the economy. You've had chances with gun rounds, force buys, ecos, pistol rounds, everything. And then we wipe the economy clean, basically, and we just go gun rounds. Who's the best gun round team, right? Who's the best team at what we hold to the highest? So that would be for the MR3 16k. Valve use the MR3 10k, which still involves the economy, so you have to actually think a bit more about the decisions with buying. And then the MR5 12k was quite interesting because you had to think a lot about buying, and then you maybe even had to have an eco or a low buy situation depending on the scenario there in those kinds of overtime. So let's go with this, Rejin. In terms of what we have right now in overtime rules, which one do you think is the best?
I think like it depends which way you look at it. I think the best way to have it is 16k, 3 rounds, let everyone have whatever they want. I think that is the best way to go. However, I like the idea that, this is just me personal, by the way, that you only have some amount of money to work with, and you have to like kind of make sure you have money for all 3 rounds. Like, but the thing what happened is like there is no wiggle room here because you have to win as many rounds as possible, you know. So I just believe like the 10k rule is just way too punishing for the CTs. Like in case they lose 1 round, they literally suddenly losing 3-0, you know. So I think like from that perspective it's really bad like to have 10k because it puts way too much on the first round for the CTs.
Well, so, the main argument against 16k, just to put that out there, is mostly because of like ridiculous multi-op situations in last round and stuff like that. But honestly, like the more that I was thinking about this and the more I was like observing these situations, it so rarely has any real effect on the match. Like especially on maps like Dust 2, where like, you know, last round, whether it's overtime or not, like last round of regulation,
spam that
people will just spam with auto snipers or just ops. But honestly, like that does not work a lot of the so much of the time. That does not even make a dent on the CTs. Of course, like it's random. It sometimes could have an impact. Sometimes it doesn't. But honestly, I think that argument is a little bit overblown just because it doesn't really affect much.
Confirmation bias. Like you see it because you want to see it, and when it happens, it feels like a big thing. But when it doesn't happen, no one's gonna be.
Look, I'd be fine if there was like the rule that I think Freiburg introduced, like or like came up with like a couple of years ago when this became a big topic, where you would only have a certain amount of money every round, like a 6k or something, like every round. But there wouldn't be like a big bag that you have for the whole overtime. It's just like every round you would have 6k.
That's actually available. A good idea. I like that.
Or like a 6.5k. So even more like 6k, I guess. So you can't have an op, a vest helm, and all the nades on top. You can only have like a few guns with all the nades, or like 4 guns with all the nades and 1 op that's not going to have all the nades. So it's not going to happen where you're going to have three ops and still rebuy for an M4. You know.
How do you then, if you survive 5 guys, everyone has AKs. Let's say that. Then you get new money.
No, it's just like I think you just actually yeah. I guess that's a good point.
It needs a new mechanic, and in this like.
But just to sorry to cut you off, Prof. But it's only on Dust 2 you see this problem. You don't see that anywhere else. So the thing why I don't like it on Dust 2 is like you could argue it can happen for both sides. Like you can do it and the other team can do it. But then it's just lucky. Like suddenly one guy hits a shot through the wall and you're dead, you know, and that's not fun to watch. That's not good CS. I just believe that is a fault in the map design of Dust 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, that I've fucking gone on about for a while as well.
Yeah, we won't go into map design in this one. But yeah, at the same time, it's not only the op, it's just like generally destroying any form of like economy and investment into how like hunting guns or saving guns or going for a retake or not going. Like in these situations, then you go for every attempt that you can because you have 16k. It's on the CT side as well of Dust 2 that then you can go for all of these like 2v4b retakes, which you would never go. And it looks kind of ridiculous because people just like run through a smoke. To me. I don't know. It kind of seems random. Like for me personally, I think MR5, the 12K, felt the most like proper CS. But at the same time, it's the longest, so that's obviously a reason why I don't want it.
But
because
I just feel like this is the same as the pistol round. Like considering it's like overtime just should be different than what you've seen before. Like that's what Chad was saying at the start. Like you've already seen like all the different mechanics of the game throughout the last 30 rounds. Like we're not going to see anything new. So like for those 2v4 retakes or like things that teams would normally not opt for just because of the economy now being possible, and actually sometimes working out just because like they have to. They just sometimes like those 20% plays are just going to work out, right? So like for that to see that happen, especially in an overtime setting where it just makes such a big difference. If you win that 2v4, it's just such a massive clutch for you that I kind of like this part of it, that it's just going to allow a team to go for any play.
If you think that, then all Valve needs to do is introduce like a system for overtime where at the end of each round, you just get fully reset, have to rebuy everything, and every round you get 7K.
Yeah, sure.
And that's it. You can buy everything.
It would have to be different. It would have to be different per side, and like because of the difference in cost, right?
Yeah, it can be like 6K for T side or whatever.
Yeah.
But aren't we also going down a road now where it gets way too complicated?
Well, not necessarily, right? Because like
the overtime rules are like different in like all sports and stuff like that. It's not a normal game, you know. So it's
let's say so. The CTs then got an AK. Should they keep the AK? Should not keep an AK? You know.
Let's say no. Let's say they shouldn't.
No. Yeah,
right?
I'd rather say no.
And I agree with your sentiment, because like obviously as in regulation, part of Counter-Strike is scavenging the opponent's weapons and using what you are either mechanically the best with or what is the best, aka the Krieg, for the longest period of time, right? And now everybody wants the AK. But I think that if we did it so that overtime, because you know that you're both going to be playing either half, right? And if it's everybody's restricted to the same rules, it doesn't matter as much. Overtime's where we can actually start getting a bit funky with things, because we can move away from it. Like we're never going to be like football where we have fucking penalty shootouts. I think that's like whenever, imagine that, we go aim map.
Fucking aim map, yeah.
I mean,
let's go.
Blast had something similar which never happened, I guess. It was like some sort of a Blast shootout thing.
I remember it.
It was like a fifth tiebreaker or something, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately we never saw it. Like I'd love to see that.
Honestly, I like, just for the sake of seeing it once, I would have liked to see
Imagine
it.
everyone being outraged about it, like especially the losing team
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the fans of the losing team even more.
This is why I don't like the football rules, right? Because football takes away from the team game and makes it individual. It literally just that, like a penalty kick becomes like a coin toss to me. Right?
It is. Like it kind of is.
So we want to stay away from that dynamic. But like, so let's say on the CT side, AWP 4750, you get head armor, that's 1,000. You get a defuse kit, that's 400. You've got 600 for an incendiary. You got 300 for a nade, 300 for a smoke, 200 for a flash, right? So you add that all together, I think that should be the ballpark, roughly. Or if you want to add on a little bit extra cash so they can buy a pistol, that's like your ballpark, right? And that would be the same start money every single round. And then the Ts, it would be a little bit less, because obviously they don't have to worry about buying the defuse kit, and their Molotov doesn't cost as much, so you can scale it down just there, right? But this is where I made the suggestion on social media about doing it more like tennis. Now, I didn't necessarily mean it in tennis where so for those people who don't know, when you're playing, is it a set? I think it's a set. I'm not hugely versed. When you're playing a set, if you get to 40-40, it's juice, right? And then you need to get 2 in a row. So you need to win one, you get advantage, and then if you win that next one, then you win the set.
Same as table tennis and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so in Counter-Strike, the way that would work in my mind is we would finish 15-15. Rejin's team, they're on the CT side. My team, we're on the T side. We play that round. Let's say Rejin's team wins. Okay, well then I now swap over. Rejin swaps over. We now have another round. If Rejin wins, he wins the game. If I win, well, we go again, right? It's reset. We go again. So then you'd have that constant back and forth where you need to win 2 consecutive rounds here to close out the game, meaning you've had to have won a round on the T side and the CT side without being broken. And in my mind, with that in play, it's not going to take away a huge amount of time from the games, because we've already discussed that overtime is one of those things that is more of an outlier than the common. But it also means that like the level of intensity in those rounds is going to be fucking insane. I think like MR3 overtime, teams can get away with, having a few lazy ones. And we always talk about Counter-Strike at that point. Oh, the strat book's gone out the window. Like for me, like, let's get the overtime super intense. Keep that pressure on consistently, bang, bang, constantly swapping, bang, bang, bang. And like, imagine how insane that would be if they never could break each other. Like, obviously that would be shit for scheduling and the whole point of this conversation. But I feel the intensity there would be huge. Like,
I actually
if
like
it was
that.
flawless.
I would be willing to see that in practice for sure, just to see, especially like how it would like change the flow. It's just like fucking they're on the other side now and back to the other side and stuff like that. I think it would be kind of fun. I like a fun mechanic for sure.
I think
I
with that
actually like that idea a lot.
Also, that all automatically resolves the issue with this like resetting the teams and stuff. If you swap sides after every round, then you automatically can't take over any guns into the next round.
That's true as well.
So you don't really have to do anything with the game. It's just like instantly there. So you just have to put MR1 in overtime rules, and that's it.
And you could also have
like
literally no
breaks,
breaks,
and then you cannot buy the auto snipe whatever you want.
Yeah, you could also have like no breaks. Like it would literally be just like right until freeze time. You know, when the second round hits, you have like 15 seconds to decide what the fuck you're gonna do on the other side. It would be kind of. I think it would be just fun to see, at least like to see how it works.
Okay, well maybe I could get it in at a tournament coming up soon.
If it goes over 7 rounds, then you just start decreasing the time of the round and the bomb timer for like by 3 seconds. Until you go like until literally you just instantly win on the CT side. And that's how you limit the match to like 2 hours, map 2 hours max.
Look, that kind of stuff I don't hate.
I think that's a fun part. I like that.
Yeah, I think like that's what, because we can start getting crazy with it, right? Like I think we don't have to, but this is part of the discussion just for people at home who are maybe getting a little bit aggravated that we're trying to change the game and stuff. I've said it at the start, I'll say it again, an hour and 40 minutes in. This is literally just a conversation. This is just a bunch of dudes sitting around talking about the video game that they love, about options. None of this stuff will probably ever happen, but it's good to have these conversations. And not only is it good to have these conversations, guys, it's good in your life as well to reflect on your value systems every couple of years and question, is the way that I treat my friends and I look after myself, is it good? Am I doing the right stuff? This is important stuff. You know, you got to learn to do it. Anyway.
Dude, these overtime rules, they're going to change once we see like an 8 fucking overtimes in a LAN match, and tournament organizers realize this can actually happen in practice, and we can go into like 4 a.m. just because a fucking match went 4 hours overboard.
But I actually like the most about what you said there, chat, and also with you, Prof, with this scaling down the round time, whatever. It's something that is so easy to do. We don't even need Valve's help, you know? Like, you can just put that in a config. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, and Valve are like completely like up for like tournament organizers trying their own shit, as long as it's not Valve supporting events, obviously. But you know, they're completely like, they're not gonna hold a grudge just because you tried something new. They don't care if you allow Yumpy in your own tournament, even though he has a back ban. They don't care. So it's obviously, they're gonna allow this.
So in terms of overtime stuff, guys, do we have any more like suggestions or ideas or anything like that we could throw in here? I'm pretty much done with overtime.
Same.
Can't think of anything just beyond like, unless it just goes too long and you just go like literally just like any map or something and just like whatever, like something of a shootout, you know.
Yeah,
but
like
that's pretty much it.
Do you guys remember like in round robins? We've had it happen in the past where if groups in round robins are tied, that was madness. Or 6, I don't remember which one it was, but it was
later.
madness.
There was not a major.
I'm pretty sure it was 16.
Yeah, 16 then.
Yeah, probably. Or it could have been 17.
17. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I know what you're talking about.
That was wild. Once they were tied in the group.
That was we were talking about the rematches, right?
But could we put it up like this? So should overtime stay? Yeah or nay?
Overtime should definitely stay.
Like, what else can we do?
I think it's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. There's something you have to do with it. So
yeah, I mean, like, I just wanted to make sure everyone is on there.
There's a suggestion in chat: danger zone for OT. I like that. Let's do that. Let's do that one. All right, let's talk about the tournament structures. This will be our last one. We're not going to get to the recent news. Maybe me, Striker, and Prof will do an episode later this week where we actually catch up on what's been going. But for now, we'll just keep to the Gamechanger discussions and we'll talk about tournament structures. So at the moment, let me do this as quickly as I possibly can. We're obviously in a very online heavy scenario right now. Consider this just for right now. I don't know if we're ever going to get out of this COVID stuff. Hopefully we do. Hopefully we don't. Hopefully we do, guys. Relax. Hopefully we do. Hopefully. Everyone calm down. But look, going into this, moving forward, we should go back to regular programming, which a LAN event takes 6 to 7 days, right? That's how long it normally takes, 6 to 7 days. When we keep that in mind, you have the travel days on either side, and then we have heaps of tournaments like around that. So this is where we need to maybe take a very, very, very big step back and take a look at the circuit or the tournaments and all that kind of stuff, and say, how many tournaments should a team be attending in a year? And Rejin, you are probably the best person to ask that question, because Mouse Sports, before you joined, were sending their team to every single tournament they could think is possible, and now you guys have still attended a lot of tournaments, but it feels like there's a couple less. You got to be a bit more selective. So is that a discussion you guys have had as a team, how many events in a year you'd be aiming for?
Yeah, well, the players are deciding which tournament they want to go to, more or less, and then of course I'm gonna say yes or no. Not like it's definitive, but like, does it make sense in that way? Like, which tournament do you go to or not? But I think, like, if you would like to have players be in this game for a longer time, I would say maximum one event per month, maximum. I would even maybe go to say one event every 2 months. Depends on how longevity you want the players to be in this game, because if you're starting to reach my age, which is now 32, but then we're talking wife, kids, house, all that things, and you being away for, let's say, 14 days per month is just way too much. No one's going to do that. Plus you have to practice when you're home then. So I think at a health perspective, both mentally and physically, I would say maximum one per month. And especially, like, I believe, like, some hardcore fans would say, "Oh, I love to watch CS all the time." Yeah, but there's also a tier 2 or 3 scene you can watch in that case. Like, for the best teams, in my opinion, maximum one every 1.5 months, just to meet in the middle there.
What about this? What would you, and knowing your team, would a compromise, if this was possible? Let's say we could make a decision right now. You attended one decent sized event every month for 8 months of the year, and then we have obviously the majors. They take a little bit longer period of time, but for these ones where you're only going and doing one event, for example, the online Counter-Strike we've just had, now online Counter-Strike, no one's ever going to try and argue that it's as good as LAN, but if you supplemented like some LAN events to mean that you had to play a couple of games online for, I don't know, whatever, would that be like a compromise that you think that top tier pros would be willing to make?
I'm not 100% sure I get what you're at there.
So right now, if you're only working, right, if we looked at it this way, because you guys get paid, the players get paid to perform, right? Like that's it. They get out there to go and do their absolute best. So from a organizational perspective, like a team, they'd look at it, how can we maximize? So obviously they want to do promotions with the team, all those bits and pieces, but for a lot of these players, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, a lot of these players don't speak English as a native language, so a lot of them aren't obviously very good on camera or coming to promoting content and doing that kind of stuff. So the best content you could get out of your players is for them to play. But if you guys are only going to one event a month, then maybe your team doesn't feel like they're getting the value out of it. So to supplement that, online Counter-Strike could be an option. Right, so you play your one LAN event, and maybe you play a couple of online games for whatever reason in a month, because it's like the trade-off here starts to become a question. I see it when players obviously want their breaks and all this kind of stuff, and they don't like it when the player break's getting scheduled over, and I completely understand that. I completely respect that. But there has to be a certain amount of time, and this must be in your contracts, that you have to work in a year. So that's where the question becomes: do they start seeing it as you're not working enough if you're only going to one event a month? And that's that's not a me question.
I'll just shorten this. What I think personally, and I think Chad agrees, but he's trying to say it in a polite way, players playing one event in 2 months is fucking bullshit. Like, that is stealing pay. That is not work. That is stealing money. Like, what the fuck? That is too much. That, like, you are not providing anything almost a value to your organization if you're playing one event every 2 months.
I was also looking at it as a health message. So I get you, but I was also looking at it for if we want players to be in this game for a very, very long time, you cannot have 200 plus travel days a year. You cannot.
100%. I agree.
That's gonna go. So it's of course finding the middle ground. Like I said, one month, one event per month is in my book ideal. Maybe too little, but you have to think like this. It's not like when we're not at events, we're off. Like, no.
You're still practicing, but it's about how they
super
generate money
hard,
off of you.
you know?
That's the thing, right?
That's another part of it. That now I'm only speaking for the players as a coach. You know, I have a daughter, I have a wife. I'm away for last year, I don't know how many days, but a lot of days. Without all the tournaments, we have boot camps also. We're taking out 10 days before a major. Suddenly you're gone 7 weeks in a row. It's like, come on. I mean, like, there should be something where you can go home, and also that when we're doing these boot
100%.
camps, you're doing promotions, you're doing media, you're being active on your social stuff and whatever. I just don't see it. Like, if you were having another way you could put it is like, so you could have an event stretching over a month. That is another way to look at it, because
Yeah,
then
so
you
that's what the
wouldn't have
majors are
games.
like, right?
Yeah, more or less. You wouldn't have games every single day, where you have this when you go to an event, you're there for a week, you play every single day. And I mean, like, for me, I just think, like, if you want to stretch it, then stretch it, but you cannot just add more tournaments. In my opinion, this is not good for it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think when you then draw like a parallel to like normal like football or whatever, they obviously have a longer summer break, maybe than they have like national stuff going on, but usually it's maybe 2 to 3 months almost. Most these like normal sports have a big break, but other than that, it's like games, 2 games a week, maybe 3 games a week, even depending on what kind of a schedule people are going on. So looking at, and they also have practice and maybe 2 practices a day, like morning, evening, and stuff like that. I think what you're trying to say, the biggest issue is actually not the practice and playing, it's more the travel and the being, like the disconnectedness or decentralization of CS, that everyone is somewhere else and everyone needs to travel to somewhere to play events. We don't really have like an LCS where everyone is living in Berlin or in LA. So then you can kind of build a life around that, and at least for 3 months in a year, you can build a life around that. And I guess that is something which I guess like Flashpoint is also trying in all of these like LAN leagues and stuff like that. But I feel like we like CS tournament organizers, players, and everything kind of got lost in what they're actually asking for with moving all of the leagues to LAN. I think that is actually not, depends on what you want, but like if you want to have more free time and more time at home, then you want to have online CS.
Yeah.
Because then you give your team, your org, you give them something, you give them matches, because that's the most watched things that can happen. You give them that, but you are still at home, you're still practicing, you could still like have half of the day at least to spend and do like normal stuff. So I think maybe we kind of got lost in that and maybe did some bad decisions along the way.
If I like, I like that idea, Chad, you're bringing up before. Like, so you have one event 1 month to say that, then maybe you have 2 matches online. That's fine, because then you're home. You can do all these things home. I just don't see how much value that adds to play an online match compared to.
It definitely adds a lot of value, because
I get that, but it's not the same as you being out with people. You know what I mean?
Like, look, if I'm speaking out of my ass here, but I know
fine, you can do that.
I don't actually have the like figures on this kind of shit, but I would say if we ran all of our Counter-Strike like we just did for the last 2 months, people would first of all get bored. But that's not the point where I was going for here. If we ran the Counter-Strike in that way, TOs would make money. Like, tournament organizers would actually make money, because this is a whole different conversation in itself. But the value that they get just being able to show you, right, is great. Like, not having you at the event kind of sucks, because one of the biggest things for bringing people to the event is getting as close to possible as the players. Like, the signing sessions in feedback for tournaments is the #1 thing, because people want to be close to their idols, right? That's just how it works. But if we did Counter-Strike online with the viewership that we got for the Pro League or the Road to Rio in a lot of these big ticket games, is figures that you can sell on. It doesn't matter if it's online or LAN. The distinction to. So my point here is that I'm with you that the travel is ridiculous, but like, and I think that potentially like if I use EG at the tail end of last year, like they were basically just accepting everything. And this goes back to the circuit as a whole. It goes back to all the TOs, and it also is a thing about choice. Like it's a thing where I fuck up. It's a thing where I think a lot of teams fuck up as well, is we don't know when to say no. And we don't know when to say no.
For
because...
me, I can just say like the most crazy I've tried with this team, like just to put it in perspective, like, so here's the thing with the rankings and all that, we were fighting really hard to come in that top 5. If you want to break that top 5, of course you have to win some tournaments, but you also, when you're outside top 5, you're not in a position to say no to events because you need the points. So you, in that regards, you're forcing the teams to say yes to all these things. So just to take an example, last year, starting November, the 10th we go boot camp directly to Shanghai after, coming home 26. We are home for 4 days, then we go to directly Pro League. We are home for 12 hours, then we go to LA, directly from LA to Russia, and then we're home by 23rd of December.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that is not healthy, that's not good,
Christmas.
That's not anything. You know what I mean? But we were forced to do it because we want to break that top 5. We also broke that top 5, almost like won everything, single thing there. So it was really good. But it's like, you cannot keep doing that. Like, there's no person who can keep doing that and stay on the top.
That right there brings us to the actual like crux of competitive Counter-Strike. Is competitive Counter-Strike, do we like, this is a question, and this is the way that I kind of think about it. To be the best team in the world, you need to be the most consistent team in that period of time, and that period of time is always shifting. Like that period, imagine we're just on a conveyor belt and it's always moving. Well, everyone is always moving, and some people are running on the conveyor belt, some people are standing on the conveyor belt, some people are walking, but we're still moving along, right? So Counter-Strike is like, okay, well, how are we defining who's the best team? Well, let's say that you win this tournament, but then you go and you come last in the next tournament. Well, we don't consider you the best team, but you got a trophy, so you might feel pretty good about the trophy, but in terms of like Counter-Strike from general perspective, we don't consider you like the best team. The way that we like stack up is to win the majors. That's the first one. But if you win the majors, an anomaly like Gambit, we don't give a fuck about that either. Like that. So it feels like Counter-Strike is based off of consistency, and to your point, it's who is willing to be the most insane to drive themselves to constantly be that consistent. Now, Astralis have obviously found a balance, and their balance was heavily critiqued about skipping certain events. And that in itself was a question, because they were only attending the Blast events, which were best of ones, which we weren't valuing in the same way, and that's a whole different debate. But it takes us to what happened in 2020. Now, it's been derailed. It's already kind of fucked up. But for example, with you guys weren't involved in Blast, right? Like, you guys weren't initially involved in the Blast stuff with Fnatic. Do you think that was, like, realistically, if the year panned out the way it was going to, and you guys are an ESL team, right, do you think that you would have not had enough tournaments to play? Because when I look at my calendar with ESL events, I was planning on working all of those as well as the DreamHack ones, and that would have been enough events for me to literally, if I wanted to, just say, that's enough work for the whole year. Like, would you have felt that it was enough tournaments for you guys for the whole year if you just did ESL and DreamHack and the majors, obviously?
Now I don't have the full schedule, of course, in my head, but
roughly 10 to 12 events.
Then I would argue yes.
Yeah, but this is then when people like get up in arms about the exclusivity or not joining leagues or not doing this or not doing that. Like, then that's another problem, because these companies are offering ways for people to be involved in that and have to play less and do this. But then there's so much community pushback because the community views that as evil, right? So then if we want to keep a constant open circuit, which is what tennis is, for example, you can earn points on the, I don't know, I think the Australia one's the APT or whatever the fuck it is. You can
ATP.
Yeah, you can earn points constantly, right? So like, let's say that you guys are the Djokovic, right? And that the minnows are the fucking fish who are coming on up, and those are the tier 2, tier 3 teams, and they're going to all the little ones. They're going to all the little bits and pieces to earn more points just to try and keep up with you. But you only need to go to one every so often. That's kind of how I know that everyone thinks I'm an ESL shill, so whatever. But that's kind of how I view the ESL Pro Tour, right? Is like, it has clear distinctions. If you're in need of some points, you go to a DreamHack Open and you earn yourself a couple of extra points if you have to, right? Like, but with all the tournaments, with everybody involved, with every single TO, like, you either do the open circuit like we used to, where you do like Star Ladder into fucking Epicenter, into ESO, into DreamHack, into Face It, into E-League. Like, E-League doesn't give a fuck what Starlight are doing, and Starlight doesn't give a fuck what ESL are doing. Like, all those things happening right there is why, like, Counter-Strike gets so chaotic. And then it's like, well, what tournaments weighted more? Well, like, Rejin, you know, like, we don't have to say it here on air, but you know there's some tournaments you go to where you get looked after better, they have better tournament quality of PCs, they have, like, all this stuff is much better than other tournaments, but you still go to all the tournaments and they're equally weighted by the community as the same, which is fucking bullshit. And I wish players would speak out more about good tournaments, bad tournaments, but whatever. I think, anyway, as a year as a whole, people need to be more selective, because there is a lot, but it's choice, right? It's choice. Let's just have a bit more choice here. And then I don't think it would seem like such a mountain, right? So is more always better? Well, I've learned recently, for me, it's not, right? And I don't know if that's the same as what teams, whether we should leave it open circuit so that teams get to choose, or we should close it up with a more restrictive style. I don't know which the right option is, but it has to be one of the two. It can't be staying in the middle ground where we are. I don't know if
I think you're onto something there, but like, for me, when I just see the whole CS scene, I just think there is too much CS. That's at least how I see it. And if you want to then prolong a tournament, do that. Be my guest. Make a tournament 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't care. But then give the players time to come home. Everything is good, so you can, like, prolong it like that. But I think, like, having a tournament every week, it kind of nullifies the excitement, no?
Oh, for sure. 100%, because it's the same teams almost every single time as well.
I love to see Astralis playing some other good team like us, for example, or whatever. But if you see it every week, it's gonna be like.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, boys. We're 2 hours into this already, and I feel like we've literally just scratched the surface of some of this. The thing is, it is 1 a.m. It is very late. Prof hasn't slept a lot. I think what we'll do is we're going to close this down, because this was actually perfect. The fact that we have ended this when everything open is great, because we're going to do more of this. We're going to do more of this type of conversation. We're going to have more conversations about Counter-Strike and things that are good and bad in the future. Is everyone cool with shutting this bad boy down?
I think it's good. We're finishing opening. An
good.
open thing.
Prof? Striker?
Oh shit! Okay.
I was just watching
how long did I
how
have
long
it
it took for Striker.
I didn't talk for a long time because Chad had a tangent.
I was riffing for a while.
Okay, I'm just gonna put one. Okay, fuck. Now I just lost my train of thought a little bit. Yeah, it just sucks that.
Choice.
Okay, there you go. It just sucks that we were put in this situation at the time that we did, just because I thought we were on the right track with how Blast started and how we got into Katowice, just because Blast, had a really, like, digestible format, just 2 best of 3s in a day. Teams were only there for a couple of days at a time, or for a few days at a time before they went out and, like, another group went in, just like the same as, like, Pro League used to be before. And we would have gone into Katowice, then we would have gone into a similar system in Pro League. And so it would have been a lot better segmented than it usually would be. So it just sucks that we were put in this situation at the time that we did, just because we would have seen how it could look if we ran this format, for years to come.
That's a good point.
At least for the first few months. So I feel like we will see eventually how this will look, for sure. Just like whenever we actually get past this, probably I assume next year.
Yeah,
we're just gonna see, like, a repeat of this year, how this year was supposed to look, minus some organizers that probably will crash out just because of the situation.
That's a very good point. I think that I was in a similar sentiment to that. This year kind of felt like everything. There wasn't a single point in my calendar where I was flying cross continent to fucking America to Europe or anything like that to do a back-to-back event. So if it's like that for me, it's probably like that for a lot of the players as well. And if we did end up heading in that direction, hopefully we would have got more of what Rejin was talking about, right? Because, guys, we're going to end this on a nice little note here. If the coronavirus has taught you anything, it's that you have a lot of time right now, most likely. And with that time, instead of sitting there on your phone, swiping on Instagram, looking at some amazing females' asses who do squats all day, or, I don't know, buying yourself a fucking skin or ordering some dumb t-shirt, just sometimes have a little bit of a think about life and think about the things that are important. Because
buy those teams t-shirts just because it gives them some money to work with. It's actually pretty good for the scene. So
look,
I meant actual, like, jerseys and shit, and not like a t-shirt.
Oh, I didn't mean those. I just meant like I buy shit off Instagram all the time. But look, guys, just consider with all this time you have, it's okay to think about things, have discussions about things, get the conversation going about anything in your life. It doesn't even really matter. just talk to people online on the internet. We do that very, very well. And as always, be nice to your mum, because we've all got one, and they've all had to birth you at some point, and that means you're pretty intimate with her vagina. So we're going to close this one down.
I think last thing we need to say, Chad, is like we shouldn't be afraid of evolving.
100%. There's more than one way to skin a cat, ladies and gentlemen. And on that, before the animal services come and try and take me away, we're out of here. See you next time. Anchor.fm. We'll be back in a couple days or a week or whatever. I'm not quite sure, but we'll be back with another show soon. Peace.